everybody. Welcome to Too Much Shenanigans. This is our 7th episode. I am Shannon,
And I'm
and that is
Shannon.
also Shannon. Yep, exactly. So, Too Much Shenanigans. Welcome to our 7th episode. We have some exciting items to talk about tonight. At least I'm excited, and I think Shannon is excited as well. We do usually start off with a one of those silly get to know you questions that people do, when you're in a group doing activity, getting to know each other. And I got to pick this month, and I'm very excited about this question because I think it's going to be funny. So, Shannon,
Yes.
what is your go-to dance move?
Yeah, I think well, for one, like I did do like actual dance lessons and stuff and like when I was growing up and like in college. And when I was at a swing dance event in college, we actually like learned this one move that like Justin Timberlake uses a lot in his like music videos or like in his choreography, and it's hard for me to explain it unless you see it, but like your feet kind of like switch back and forth between like this sort of, and it's like I can't explain it without showing it, but like that's like my immediate thing because it looks really cool, the footwork, and you
Oh,
look really
okay.
chill when you do it. But yeah, that or just any BTS dance move I pick up because they're really good with their choreography.
Okay, what's BTS? I don't.
Oh, that's the K-pop group.
I
That
assumed it was
yes,
a K-pop group
yes,
because I didn't know. I
yeah.
hadn't heard. Yes.
They're
Okay,
like
gotcha.
the biggest K-pop group that's out right now globally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you can tell that I don't follow K-pop then.
I should be
But
talking about one of their albums on one of this maybe. So
oh, there we go. Maybe
yeah,
next month.
yeah, next month.
So, okay. Yeah. Then I can hear all about it.
Oh, you
So,
will.
my go-to dance move is well, when I saw this question, it's kind of an inside joke between me and my husband. That one day I just started doing the finger pistols.
Yeah.
And and then he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "This is my signature dance move." And so, yes, my go-to dance move when when I need to think of a cool move to do, gotta do the finger
Finger
pistols.
pistols. Yeah. No, I mean,
Finger pistols.
I think of the dance number in Greece. I feel like that happens, doesn't it? And like they like I don't
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
like yeah, nice.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do that, and then they do like the cowboy
Yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yep, mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was memorizing the dances from the Grease movie, so that's where it came from, like from my
It
subconscious.
came from the
One
hand jive
day,
way back when.
yes, yes, it did. I used to have the hand jive memorized too. I don't know if I could still do it. Maybe if
uh
I heard the song,
I
but
can do it. Yeah.
but yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
all right. So there's our question. Now you all know our lovely signature dance moves that we do. I can tell probably no one wants to take me out dancing right now, because I'll embarrass them. So let's move on to our first item.
Yes.
Yes, and let's see what we are discussing. Yes. Oh, it's me.
Yeah.
I didn't remember. Yes. All right. So I'm going to discuss Mooncakes, which I have read. I read last week, actually. Mooncakes is a fantastic graphic novel by Suzanne Walker and Wendy Zhu, and actually published by Lion Forge Comics, which is a local company, actually. And it is a really sweet paranormal love story between a witch and a werewolf. Nova is the witch and Tam is the werewolf. And it was just I decided to check it out because I've been wanting to read more graphic novels lately, and everybody had good things to say about Mooncakes. And I mean, look at the cover; it's just adorable.
It's very precious.
So, what?
Oh, I said it's very precious.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I was like, oh, witch and werewolf. I like paranormal things. So, and I I really enjoyed it. I actually took my time. I mean, with graphic novels, through them really fast because there's not as much text. but I really enjoyed like really focusing on the pictures. I liked the artwork a lot. I really liked how so Wendy Zhu, she is the artist, and I liked how the book is kind of like there's a first half where you're getting to know the characters and the situation, and the first half has like lighter colors and happier colors, and then there's a point in it where it starts getting darker
Mm.
and like things start happening, and suddenly all the colors on the page are darker and more like spooky, and I really liked that transition, how it um, represented the difference in tone and what was going on in the story. It was very clever. So Nova and Tam, they've known each other since they were children. Tam, however, they moved away, and but they never forgot about each other. And then there's some shenanigans, I guess, going on in the forest outside of town, and it has something to do with Tam, who is the werewolf. And Nova, who is a witch, she kind of goes around making sure magical happenings are, taken care of with her two grandmas who have raised her since her parents died. And yeah, so that's how they meet. They meet in the forest when there's some paranormal freaky stuff going on, and I really loved how um like inclusive this graphic novel was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like Nova, she's raised by her two grandmas, and then Tam, I like in one of my favorite scenes they correct one of the grandmas and they say I use they them pronouns now. And the grandma was like, "Oh, my bad." And then everybody just calls them by the correct pronoun and nobody makes a big deal out of it. And I just loved that
Yeah.
that was included because it was like this is normal. So why make a big deal out of it? It's just the way things are. So I really appreciated that in it. And then my favorite characters though, it's funny because Nova and Tam are the main characters and they do have a very sweet love story, but I really loved her grandmas. And
Yes, they're great in this graphic novel. They're
right,
awesome.
right, they were like so tough but loving and just like and they would give each other side eye all the time. They'd be like over the
Yeah.
teenager, and I just loved them. So, and then my other favorite character was her Nova's best friend Tatiana. Oh man, she was hilarious, especially towards the end when there's like stuff going. She's just like the epitome of a good friend
Mm.
being there. She's like, "Well, you're not leaving me behind and I'll do what I can." And she was just really funny too. So those were my favorite characters in Mooncakes. And then also the forest spirits. Oh my gosh, were the most adorable thing you've
Yes.
ever seen. Like every time they showed them, I like squeaked inside
Yes, they're
because
so
they were
precious.
just they are. Like they were like when they're happy, they're like adorable, and then
Mm.
even when they're like being tough, they were like little tough spirits, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like she drew these so adorable. Like I was like I can't get over how cute these forest spirits are. I was like I want to take some home with me. So, yeah, Mooncakes, it's really good, really good inclusive, with a really good story, and I really enjoyed it. We do have it on Hoopla if you want to check it out now, since I have our copy right here. I will be returning it tomorrow, so in a few days you could put it on hold. But it is on Hoopla if you want to check it out digitally. But I highly recommend Mooncakes. It is sweet and it also has a cool paranormal aspect to it, and the artwork is really good. So that's Mooncakes. And I think you've read it, right,
Yeah,
Shannon?
I have.
So
Yeah. And I would agree. Like I think it was very sweet. It was very cute. I also like the representation in it. Like I remember the time I was reading a lot of these graphic novels that gave me like fall vibes or like supernaturally vibes, because that's also just one of my go-to like themes or settings. And yeah, I remember this one, like the plot, I remember I don't feel like it was as heavy or as focused as maybe some of the other graphic novels I read, but I do think the characterization and just like the gentle feelings that this graphic novel created make it definitely worth it, especially this time of year when maybe people are looking for that sort of gentle, happy
Yeah.
things.
I mean, honestly, everything I'll be talking about tonight is something that's like sweet and happy. Well, kind of, I guess. But I mean, like, because I've had a really rough month the past month, as Shannon knows, and so I've been focusing on reading, watching, listening to things that are happy and cheerful and something to cheer me up. So, and Mooncakes did that. It makes you smile, and I do agree. It seems more character
Mm-hmm.
oriented than plot oriented, which is great in a graphic novel. Um, you would think that wouldn't be possible, but it really is.
Yeah, yeah, it's. I definitely am curious to see if like this is just going to be a standalone graphic novel, or if we're ever going to see like a sequel in the series with these characters. Because I do think there's more that could be said. There's more adventures to be
Yeah.
had with them. But
Mhm.
as far as I know, there's been no news of that yet.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything either. So, but they totally could do a sequel for sure. So, all right,
Yeah.
moving on
So
to Shannon's first item.
yeah, so I'm also going to be talking about a graphic novel that I just read yesterday. And it's been on my to read list since I heard it was coming out like earlier this year, because it came out, I think maybe it was either in the spring or the summer. It's Banned Book Club, and I also have it right here with me, by Kim Hyun Sook. She's a Korean author, and this is a graphic novel nonfiction book about the protests that were happening in South Korea in the 1980s, and is generally around the ideas of censorship in the community at the time, and the totalitarian government that kind of took the place after the Korean War. And it's, for me, like, being a Korean file, is, I don't know if that's what you would call it or not, but like I love learning about South Korea. um, and this was like one of the first things I've gotten to like read about or learn about. Like, you know, I don't know a ton of the history about the country. I know like a lot of their pop culture currently, what's happening. And so this is really interesting to kind of dig into, you know, the background of some of these issues that are still kind of prevalent today. In the book, it talks about events, you know, that are happening all the way up until, you know, 2017 is when the book ends. So it's,
Oh wow.
yeah, it's really interesting, because I think these are the things that a lot of times Westerners don't get to know about South Korea, or maybe it's just not exposed as much, because South Korea really values having a positive cultural like media experience, and so they try to push all the good things, like I think probably most countries do. And yeah, so it was fun to learn more about these events, and it's about the author is the main character of this book, and all the other characters are based off of real life people. Their names are changed in this book, and like aspects of them are kind of formed together from the real life people, just because these people could still face repercussions for these things today, even though they were in college at the time these events occurred.
Yeah.
And so this girl, she's going away to college for the first time, and her goal is like she just wants to study, she wants to learn, and she wants to go out into the world. She wants to do big things. And when she arrives, there's all these protests that are happening all over the place, and she's overwhelmed by it. And she's like, I don't want anything to do with these protests. I'm just here for school. And she ends up kind of getting dragged into what's going on, because she's trying to get involved with the school, and every club that she starts to join is somehow secretly like an organization that is going up against the government at the time and what's happening. And so Banned Book Club then is a group that she joins, where all the books that the people are reading in this club are books that have been banned in the country. And it could just be, you know, things that had ideas or politics that were contrary to what the government wanted. It could be just like like the actual like material of it was considered like too scandalous, and so therefore it was being censored. And pretty much any book that was currently coming out that was defying that what the government was saying at the time. And so all and I love this being a librarian because I think a lot of what our goal is like we are open accesses to information and books and learning, and we don't try to censor these things. We give people like the information that they want. We don't hold back, and so I think this really would kind of hit home with the librarian part of me. And it's just fascinating to see her own personal journey as she weighs like her own beliefs versus the beliefs of like all these people that she's surrounded by, versus like learning new things that she didn't know about her own government, about herself. And I think it's just a really good message about feeling like you can be empowered to learn the things that you want to learn about, and that there's never an end to that learning, and there's always two sides to any situation. So yeah, that's a summary of it. It is not nearly as fluffy as Mooncakes
Oh, well, yeah.
have whatsoever. It's black and white, panels. There is some like torture that does happen, and so it's a little bit graphic at times, because during this time, as you can imagine, there's a lot of military presence and pushback against the protesters. People were being kidnapped and taken in to be questioned, to find other people who were going up against the government. Some people would disappear. So it is a tough subject, and I think a lot of people, maybe even this year, who may have experienced some of these similar maybe issues that we see happening back here in the 80s. So if you are somebody who is like in a headspace that is like, no, this is too real for like my own life, then it's totally okay to not pick this up. But if you're someone who just is curious to see how how protesting works in other countries around the world, or like events that have happened and are continuously happening around the world, I think this is a good, nice starting point to kind of see a new perspective that's outside of the United States.
Yeah, no, I actually think it sounds really good, and that might be the librarian part of me. Like, I see anything that's like banned book or some censorship, and it's all like, I must read that and see, how, like, yeah, it's totally a librarian thing where it's like somebody's like, we should ban books, and I'm like, you better not. So, yeah, but also I like that we're showing, you're like, it's a little bit darker, but we're showing the different kinds of things graphic novels can do. So it could be nice and
Yes.
fluffy, or it can be a memoir about, tough subjects. So it's I mean, I don't know, this might make me sound really old, but that's okay. Like, it's amazing to me how big graphic novels have gotten,
Mm.
and I love it. Like, they're doing all sorts of things now, and it wasn't like this when I was a kid. We didn't have these. So it makes me happy.
Yeah, me too. Especially, I think when it comes to nonfiction things that a lot of people would not pick up a normal book for. They're like, I don't have the attention span
Yeah.
for it. This took me like 40 minutes to read, I think, last night. So it was so easy to just pick up and to
Yeah.
learn. And with nonfiction too, because you're getting a face to like the things you're learning about, especially in this one, like
Mhm.
these are like real life people that is happening. So I think it makes the history of it all come to life a little bit more even too. So yeah,
Yeah.
if you out there like history, if you like looking at politics, or you like looking at just anything about Korea like me, this is a graphic novel for you.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, let's go into your next thing, which is the
Hey.
Grammy Award winning
Yep.
musical album.
The Grammy Award winning musical album When We Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go by Billie Eilish. All right. So, here I'm going to sound old again. That's going to be the theme of the night.
Yes.
So, I was introduced to Billie Eilish. This is kind of a weird story.
Mm-hmm.
So you might know this about me, but I don't know if anybody else does. I really love professional wrestling, and I watch it religiously. And for one of the like pay-per-view like special events like that the WWE did,
Mm-hmm.
they use they'll pick like a theme song, and so one of them they picked "You Should See Me in a Crown." by Billie Eilish. And I remember listening to it, throughout the advertisements and during the pay-per-view and being like, well, this sounds kind of cool. I was like, it's like, sounds like a dance track, and I kind of like it. And then I did hear, I think it was Bury a Friend on the radio once.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay, Billie Eilish. And so I just assumed Billie Eilish did songs just like that. Like, like dance tracks, like with the drop in the bass and all that. I assumed that was all that she did. But I was like, I'm looking for some new music. And I was like, I think I should see, like what teens nowadays are listening to. And I know Billie Eilish is popular and she's a teen. So I was like, and I saw it on Hoopla. So I was like, I'll check this album out and, give it a listen. And was I surprised because she does not just make music like that. And it was a pleasant surprise too. I actually became addicted to it and like kept listening to it over and over and over again. So I really liked it. Um, I like how she addresses issues in her songs that affect teens today. Like, she has a song about climate change and substance abuse and depression and suicide. And so she'll address heavy topics, but but she also intermixes songs that aren't as heavy. And so I think there's a nice balance to the album that way. Especially because she starts the album with a sound effect of her like taking her Invisalign out,
Yeah.
and I was like, "This is such a teenage thing."
Yeah.
like, so, which actually I always skip that now after the first time because that sound effect grosses me out of her sucking her spit out of her Invisalign. Um, but anyway, and I think she has a really pretty voice. She has a very ethereal, I think, quality to her singing. And it's unique, so I like that. And I do appreciate like how she uses, and I know that part of it is her brother because her and her brother are like super close and they make the albums together, and he writes a lot of the songs with or for her. And they use sound effects in the songs. Sometimes they sample from The Office,
Yeah.
which we talked about earlier. Or there's a sound of like a flight attendant in one song with the jet taking off, or there's street sounds. I mean, like it really creates a good atmosphere for the songs and fits in. Um, so I guess I'll just my favorite songs. I'll talk about three of them. So my favorite song on the album is called "I Love You," and I just really like that one because it's it's really pretty, and she puts a lot of emotion into her singing in that. She puts a lot of emotion into her singing in general, but in that one, it's like when I first heard it, it felt like I was having my heart torn out because it sounded like she just sang it so well, and it's such a universal emotion of like unrequited love, and it's just, yeah. So, and it's just a really pretty song. um and yeah, so I really like that one. I even watched a few videos of her singing it live, and she just puts like so much emotion into her performance and what she's singing. And for someone who's so young, because she is, it's really impressive. So I also, well, I'm just noticing like my top three songs. I don't know why, but I guess it says something about me. They're like the sadder songs on her
Mm,
album. But so I really love Listen Before I Go,
mm,
and that one is about depression and suicide. And the first time I heard that one, it really resonated with me. Um, as someone who suffers from depression and as a suicide survivor, I was like, wow, this is really well written, and really like it really expresses what it feels like to be that hopeless. And and a lot of people I think would be like, oh, you shouldn't write songs like that because then give people ideas, especially teenagers. And I would disagree, because then you feel like you're not alone. Because that's one of the biggest things, especially when I was a teenager, with, depression and anxiety, is you feel like you're completely alone and nobody else feels the same way that you do. And so I really think that her writing about these things is important. And I really liked that. And then I like When the Party's Over.
Yep,
That's my third favorite
that's
one.
my favorite on the album.
Yeah, When the Party's Over. Yeah. So, which is another one kind of like where you're like, oh, this is really pretty, but also very sad. But it's just, but she's expressing universal emotions that, whether you're, 16 or you are 35, these are emotions that you can feel, the being lonely and unrequited love and all that stuff. So anyway, that yeah, so I actually really like Billie Eilish. This album is really good. And it was quite a surprise for me. And I listened to it over and over again. Now I pretty much have all the lyrics memorized. Um, I must say that the song 8 kind of freaks me out. The whole where they made her voice sound like a little girl. I mean, it's a good song and everything, but I usually skip over it just because
Oh, I
that
love that
beginning
song
part.
too.
Oh gosh, it freaks me out. I'm like, ugh. Like, because they they adjusted her voice to sound like she's little, and I'm like, this is weird. So, yeah. So that's I recommend that if like pretty singing and because then there are songs on the album that aren't heavy like the ones I just talked about. But I think for me and my past, those songs are what really resonated with me. And they might for others. But yeah, I mean, like I said, she has a song about where she mentions climate change, and there's the song Zanny about like her friends and substance abuse. And yeah, and then there's, cool songs where it's like, you should see me in a crown, and that song I always feel like pumping my fist, like, yeah, you should see me in a crown. And then they drop the bass and you're like, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's yeah.
that's the biggest takeaway from the album, because I borrowed the CD to listen to my car while I'm driving around, and the bass for that it's an amazing bass, and my poor stereo in my car can't handle that bass, but you feel it, and it's every single song has it on this album.
Yeah.
It is
It's
great.
like, ooh, you're like, ooh, I feel that in my bones. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
so excellent, and I'm so excited to see what she does in the future with this, because I do follow her regularly. Like I watched her music video that came out this past week where she's going through an abandoned mall, just like taking all the food like from the different, yeah, it's just like definitely looks like a homemade video that her and her brother just like were goofing off in a mall. But it's just such like, it's like, yeah, that's Billie. And
Yeah.
like her and her brother also just did the new James Bond theme. Also, they were tasked with like creating that, and I watched that, like the music video for that, and it's like, oh my gosh, she is just such an astounding voice and such an incredible range too.
Yeah.
Definitely like is going places. Like, I mean, she already has won like a ton of Grammys with her first album alone. So I'm excited to see what she does from here.
Yeah. Me too. Uh, yeah, I didn't think that it would be the case, but it totally, yeah, I can't wait to see what she comes out with next. So, for those two, her and her brother being so young, they are very talented. So,
Incredibly so. Yes.
yeah.
And they live at home
All
with their
right.
parents too, which is, I just think, an interesting little fact. So, like, I mean, they're young,
Right.
but like during
Well,
quarantine, they just
yeah.
living at home with their and they just got some pets, I know, during COVID, and they're just seem like lovely people. I love them. I love them so much.
All right. So, let's move on to
Yeah,
your next.
I'm going to be talking about the film Destination Wedding, also filled with some lovely people, or at least I love them a lot. Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves are the main stars in this, and it was a couple weeks ago. My dad and I were looking for something to watch. We came across this on Hulu, and my dad's like, "Oh, you want to watch this thing? It has Keanu Reeves." I'm like, "Say no more. I will watch anything that Keanu is in, because I love him so much." And so we put it on, and you know right away from as soon as it starts, like, okay, this is definitely going to be an indie film and how it's created, which for me is either a hit or a miss. It either means like this is going to be something like I've never seen before and it's going to be really interesting, or it's going to be something I've never seen before and maybe there's a reason why I haven't seen anything like this before. And this, luckily, I think was a hit. So the entire film is really just a dialogue between these two actors, which again is something that I think can be done really, really well or extremely poorly and become very boring and stagnant. These two play two people who have both been invited to a destination wedding for people who they hate. You find out that Keanu Reeves' character is the brother of the groom, and Winona Ryder's character is the ex-girlfriend of the groom. And they meet at the airport, and they kind of, they grind up against each other, like their personalities don't match very well, and then they find out on this tiny, like 10-person plane that, oh, we're headed to the same wedding. And then they find out they're in rooms that are not only next to each other, but are technically adjoining rooms at this hotel. And they're like, oh, and we're sitting together at the same table. Like, this is going to be a long weekend. And it's just their banter going back and forth, trying to always one-up each other, just kind of being disgusted with each other and thinking each other's annoying, but it's so hilarious, the little quips that they're throwing at one another, and it's so fast. It reminds me a lot of, in Gilmore Girls, there's kind of like the quick-paced banter that happens in that. So if you like that style of writing, then you'll probably like this movie a lot, because it's one of those things where you're watching and you're listening to it, and if you're not paying close attention, you're probably going to miss something that is said. And it is just such a darling film. It really shows the acting skill level of Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves, and not just like in the sense of like film acting, but like really whenever you have only two people in a scene for especially like an entire movie, it really draws upon character work and the basics of theatrical acting, and how do you create a dynamic flowing story when all you have is an exchange between two people and you don't have anything else really interfering with that. And I think they did an excellent job at, again, creating these high moments of tension just in how they're bantering or talking to one another, and then these beautiful like subtle moments of sometimes awkwardness, sometimes affection or like understanding or like learning new things or new information about one another throughout this experience. And it's definitely, I don't know, just one of those films I think I will probably go back and rewatch. It's one of those films I would consider owning it, just because, again, who doesn't want to watch a rom-com with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, and especially when they're hilarious in it. It was definitely had a few spit take moments if if you're drinking something while watching it. But yeah, I knew nothing about it. Put on Hulu, and I was like, this is incredible. And then it came out in 2018, so if you want, there's DVD copies here at the library. You can check it out. As you know, it's also on Hulu now, and it just makes for a great, lovely little film.
I'm gonna have to watch it. I kind of remember when they were like advertising for it, and I thought it looked good, and I wanted to see it mostly because of Keanu Reeves. I love Keanu Reeves, but yeah, no, and because I remember like Keanu,
Mm-hmm.
I can talk, and Winona when they were doing the press tour for it,
Mm.
were all teasing each other about how like they're actually they're married to each other and everything like that, and they just seem like they have a really good friendship,
Yes.
and they've been in films together and they have really good chemistry together. So yeah, no, I remember wanting to see it, and then I kind of forgot about it until now, but now that I know it's on Hulu,
Yeah.
I can watch it.
Yes, and
So
I would agree. Their chemistry really is amazing with one another. It's believable, and I think another thing that I just thought of as you were talking, is that like a theme that is very prevalent in this is that sort of that underlying level of friendship and humor that goes into friendship. And it reminded me of my other, like my favorite film of all time, which is When Harry Met Sally. And it's just like, yeah, if you love that film and you love just the funny one liners that you can quote whenever, when I think of When Harry Met Sally, I get fall vibes, winter vibes. This movie, I get spring and summer vibes. So if you want to be in that place as the weather is getting colder, yeah, just pull out your Destination Wedding and watch it.
Nice.
Yes.
So, sounds good.
Yeah,
All
let's
right.
go ahead. Let's talk about your thing.
Yes, my last
Also
one is
involves tourism. Uh,
yes, it does. That's funny. Totally not planned. Yes. So I was looking for a romance audiobook to listen to. I don't often read romances, whether they are YA or adult, but like I said, I've had a tough month, so I was like,
mhm.
I want to listen to a romance novel because it will be happy and, there will be, it will that's why. And so I was kind of, skimming through Hoopla and Overdrive, and I noticed that there is one coming out. Well, it's already come out. It's called Mistletoe and Mr. Right,
Mm.
by Sarah Morgenthaler. But I noticed it was number 2 in the Moose Springs, Alaska series, and I was like, oh, there's another one. I was like, oh, well, I don't want to listen to this one if it's the second book. I mean, I'm not sure if you can, listen or read them alone. I have no idea, but being me, I'm like, the librarian person. I'm like, I must listen to the first one before I listen to the second one. So the first one is called The Tourist Attraction, and it is read by Elise Arsenault. And she sounds super familiar to me, but I can't figure out why. I did look at other audiobooks she's narrated, and I don't think I've listened to any of them, so
Hmm.
I have no idea why she sent. Maybe she just has one of those voices. She did pretty good job. Uh, she's not the best at differentiating all the different voices, especially the male ones. But I was never really lost with who was talking. And I think that might be the writing because it was very clear on who was talking. But so anyway, so the tourist attraction, it takes place in I think it's a fictional town called Moose Springs, Alaska, which is a small town in Alaska, and but they have a resort uh up in the mountains kind of for rich people to come and ski because they have good skiing because they're like at the base of a mountain. And then like during the summer, there's like, ATV tours, there's lots of scenery to see, and they're famous for their 4th of July celebrations. So that's Moose Springs, and I actually really liked the setting. Um, I had looked for what, like, when I saw Mistletoe and Mr. Right, I was like, I'm gonna listen to a holiday one because, as we've discussed before, I love those cheesy holiday movies. So I was like, I'll listen to a cheesy holiday audiobook. But then I was like, well, I'll listen, I'm listening to the first one and it's fine. It's in Alaska, so it's kind of like that, except this takes place in June and July. So it's not exactly snow covered. But I did like the setting and the description of the surroundings. Alaska sounded very pretty. Well, I mean, I didn't know it's pretty. I've seen pictures,
Yeah, it's
but
beautiful during the summertime. It's amazing. I've been there.
oh, okay, yeah, I've never been there. So, but yeah, it sounded pretty. And the book did a really good job of showing small town living, what it's like to live in a small town where everybody knows everybody else, because that's what Moose Springs is. And it's very, the book, a lot of it is about like the locals versus the tourists. And it's interesting because a lot of the locals really don't like the tourists. They hate the tourists coming in and ruining their town. But at the same time, if the tourists weren't there, the town would die
Hmm.
because their entire economy is based on tourism. And so there's a really like a lot of tension there uh throughout the entire book. And so the two main characters, Graham, he is the local. He grew up in Moose Springs. The only time he hasn't lived in Moose Springs is when he went to college. And he owns a restaurant called the Tourist Trap. And he opened it as just like something to do and a free place to eat, and the locals could hang out, but it became super duper popular with tourists. Because, I mean, like, you name it, the Tourist Trap, what else is going to happen? And so it's like he hates tourists and complains about it all the time, but he makes a ton of money off of them. And then Zoe, she is visiting Alaska from Illinois. She's from a small town in Illinois. Her dream vacation was to go to Alaska, and she'd always dreamed to see Alaska. And she actually had saved up so much money, so she could actually go on this 2-week vacation. And um, she chose Moose Springs because she has a rich friend who is staying at the resort, and so they were like, let's go together. And so those two are already kind of clashing because he's local, she's a tourist, but they are undeniably attracted to each other.
Of course.
And so, of course, because it's a romance novel. Um, and it's clean. It's a clean romance. It is an adult book, but I would not hesitate to recommend it to teens if they were interested in reading it, because there's kissing and making out, and there's kind of like mention of more, but it kind of it does the thing where it like fades to black, and
Very
nothing.
1950s like.
Yeah, exactly. So, so it's an adult book, but I would recommend it to like 14 and up, 15 and up, because it's completely clean. Um, there are several funny moments in it. There was times where I laughed out loud, especially Zoe's trip does not go as she wanted. A lot of things go wrong, and they're usually pretty funny. There's especially a funny part where she's trying to go on a horseback trail ride, and her horse doesn't want to do it, and turns around and just like takes her into the forest, and she's like trying to negotiate with this horse, and it was pretty funny. So, and then of course I must mention there is a cute blind border collie named
Heck
Jake.
yeah, dogs! Love it.
I mean, you can see him on the cover there behind Graham. He's
Oh
Graham's dog.
yeah.
Yeah, and Graham loves, like, seriously, it's like Jake is his life, and I was just like,
Worse.
oh my gosh, the description of the cuteness of this dog and everything. He really made the story. Um, it there was uh, it was pretty predictable as romance novels go, but I mean, if you're going to read a romance novel, usually you're expecting it to be. I mean, I can't think of a romance novel that has ever really surprised me. Though, like I said, I don't often read them. And then I did spend probably the last half of the book wanting to slap the two characters, Graham and Zoe, because they're like, "Oh, we only have this amount of time together, da 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 da." Even though you learn, like, well, I don't want to give it away, but anyway, just in case people want to read it. But there was times where I was just wanted to smack them around and be like, "Stop being so dense and just communicate," But I guess that's what causes the tension. But yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, like, if you like the atmosphere of Alaska, hearing about different things you can do in the summer in Alaska, and also like small town life, and if you like a clean romance, I would recommend it. And like I said, the audiobook was good. I thought she did a pretty good job of reading it, and she did make the narrator did make the funny moments pretty funny. So that's the tourist attraction. I got it on Hoopla, so you can check it out on Hoopla. And yeah, so let's move on to your last one.
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about another film here. And this one, in fact, won the Academy Award for Cinematography this past year. It is 1917. It came out last December. you can get this on DVD here at the library, or I don't think it's on any streaming platforms right now, so you'd have to rent it if you want to just stream it from your home. My big question when I came into this film, because I heard things about it, I heard it was very well done. Obviously, it won this award for cinematography. However, I was like, okay, I don't have a desire to watch another movie about the World Wars, because I feel like all of the movies are about World War I or World War II. So I kind of went into it already being like, well, my dad wants to watch this, and I will watch this from a film perspective and see what I can take from it. And I will say, it did not disappoint with the cinematography. It was astounding. So, to give you an idea of what this movie's about, it is giving you a first-person view of what life is like for a soldier during World War I in the trenches. That is the gist of it.
That sounds awful.
It is kind of brutal at times.
Yeah.
But also, I'm Shannon. I don't necessarily hold back when it comes to visceral things, or especially like graphically, like visually, like it doesn't faze me. So yeah, if you're not into that, don't watch it, because I think a lot of the scenes that you see in this remind me of scenes I saw like the opening one to Saving Private Ryan, when you have that intense moment where you had it was like what, 14 minutes long or something of like the D-Day. I don't remember how long. I just remember it's really long and graphic.
I remember having to pause it. Like I was like, because I was like crying, and it's intense. So I was like, I need to take a break. But yeah, it's like 15 minutes of watching like realistic. Yes. So
okay,
yeah, the trench, having that, and
Okay, so the premise of this is, it's a soldier who he's with like a buddy of his, and the buddy and him get called in to meet with kind of like an upper person in the military ranks who's like, yo, you need to go deliver this message to this other group who are like going to go invade into this territory. They don't realize that they are walking into a trap. If you do not deliver this before tomorrow morning, they're all going to die. And then they're like, okay, yeah, that's fine. We'll leave the trenches and go across no man's land and get to this other area where our fellow people are stationed at. But what I didn't know entirely about this going into it is that it is done as one continuous shot, or it's supposed to look like one continuous shot for the entire thing. Naturally, when filming, there were a few like breaks that did in fact occur, but they like edited the film in a way so it looks like it's a continuous one shot no matter what. But most of the scenes that you are seeing played out were actually like 15-minute long takes, because it is like, okay, like I didn't know this until I watched the bonus features, which I would highly recommend doing. But what would happen is when they found the set that they were going to build from scratch for this film, they actually had to take the actors who had to memorize all of their lines for like, these 15-minute, 20-minute scenes, and actually plot out on this land how long it took for them to do this scene while walking. And they put markers down like at different moments so they knew like what to construct and build in that place. And so that's like the first step they did. Then they actually build this set from scratch. So they build these trenches, they build no man's land, and the set is so beautiful. Like everything they're able to create is astounding. And then when they're filming it, like they had to rehearse with like the cameraman for how they were going to go about actually like who was going to stand where, and how was the cameraman going to move and or either follow them or like guide them through in the scene, so that we are always seeing it from their perspective. And what's really neat is I believe the camera they used for this film is actually one maybe that's used with like video games, or like other, like it was like the first time this camera had ever been used in a film, and it's like really small and tiny, and made so that way it can like follow the person. And it's so cool because it talked about how like, in this choreography, like they would have someone who's like holding the camera, and walking with it like on this like little tripod thing, and then they would hook the camera onto like a crane that would then take it way up high above the set, so you get like this huge like establishing shot of like the area that's being filmed, and then the crane would like come back down. Someone would be on the other side, pick up the camera, keep walking with it. Then they would hop onto a jeep, and the jeep would then go faster like ahead of these. So like again, it's this incredibly well coordinated thing. And if you know anything about film acting, is like most time you don't have to worry about these things. Like you have multiple cameras filming it at the same time. You have multiple takes. There's a lot of editing that goes involved, so you don't have to worry about memorizing things like you would in a theater production. And so, but here it's like not only is it like a theater production where you have to memorize all of your lines, your choreography, how you move about in the set. Like this is like you are walking across a field being recorded. So it's just a real life like situation where it's this huge 3D huge like stage basically you're working on. And in some of these, yes, but it really was astounding. And my favorite scene happens a little bit after the halfway point, and they're going through. It's nighttime. They're going through this town that has been bombed. You see a little bit of storefronts that still exist, but because it's nighttime, the way that they have like brought light into the scene because they want it to be very natural is they actually time flares that go up into the sky, stay up in the sky, and so you just see in the set like these shadows moving across the screen, and it just continues to do that throughout. And so it's this very tense moment where our hero is running through trying to evade German soldiers, and while you as an audience member and him can only see so much light at a time, and there's so many, because of all the rubble, it looks very much so like a video game, where like you're watching your character go forward and you can't see what's around the corner, and then at times you're running trying to escape from the person's going to shoot you and kill you, and so it is incredibly tense, even though at times you only had one or two people in a scene, but just the set and the lighting created those feelings, and yeah, it was just once you like learn all of this behind the scenes things that went into making this film, like my respect level for it grew tenfold, because at the end of the day, yeah, it's just a story like many other stories that you would see about somebody in the war. I don't think that the plot or the characters are necessarily like the most exciting thing we've seen yet when it comes to World War dramas or stories, but if it is really is incredible just watching it unfold and just seeing what they were able to do with this film. And I definitely think this is a film that will go down in film textbooks as like, this is how these people did this. And I would not be surprised if we see more people trying to tackle this issue in other films, again, to create this very like personalized view of these characters and what they experience.
So it's a movie that pushes like the boundaries of what's possible with cinematography and
Yes.
lighting and all that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's well, then I understand why they won the Academy Award for
Yes,
cinematography.
100% deserved it. Again, just even the fact when you watch this film and you know that everything you see pretty much was built from scratch almost. Like just the trenches alone that were built from scratch, and you see how complex they are. Like you really do think it's like, oh, they just found some trenches that still exist in Europe and they just shot it there. No, like that they built them. like like it's really is, it's so beautiful. And again, this is a film that for the most part only has maybe like two characters at a time corresponding and talking to one another, and so you have these beautiful pieces of dialogue that are being exchanged between the two, and that's how you grow and learn about these characters, and so it's not super obvious the character growth that occurs. There's a lot of like small subtle things, characteristics that they do, or small motifs that keep getting brought back within the scene. There's a beautiful motif using cherry trees throughout, which again I think is probably some of the most emotional moments in the film is when you see these things with the cherry trees. But wow, yeah, again, just really going back to the craft of like acting in theater, and then how you can take the beauty from that and then apply it with even more capabilities with film. So yeah, definitely recommend go watching that if you want to see a really well made film.
I probably won't, just because I'm not in a war in a lot of I don't Yeah, more movies. They're hard on me, especially if they're too graphic. So, but I
Yes.
mean, I'm sure it sounds really cool to a lot of other people. And I mean, it does sound cool. I just don't think I could, there'd be a point where I'd be like sobbing and it'd be like, I can't go on because I cry at everything. So,
Yeah, you
um,
probably would cry at this. Yeah.
yes, I seriously, I cry at everything. So, all right, so that's 1917. So that is our content for
Yeah.
this month of November. Two movies and a graphic novel for Shannon. And then for me, graphic novel, audiobook, and a Grammy Award winning music album. So there we go. Up there on the screen, we got the Band Book Club, Destination Wedding, 1917, Mooncakes, Billie Eilish, When We Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? And then the tourist attraction. And then, just real quick before we sign off, we have some announcements about some of the library programs coming up for the rest of this month. Shannon, take it away.
Yeah. So, for our teens out there who might be watching, a lot of our programs for teens have kind of wrapped up for this month. However, we do have an exciting event happening this Saturday, which is actually open to teens and adults alike. You may have heard of Humans of New York. You may or may not have heard that of Humans of St. Louis, which is the St. Louis equivalent and the second largest of its kind in the country, just behind Humans of New York. But we actually have representatives coming from the organization to facilitate a workshop where they're going to be talking about their methodology of what they do with Humans of St. Louis, and then teaching you how you can use those own techniques within your own storytelling and using the stories that people tell to learn understanding and empathy. So it sounds like a really incredibly intentional event, and I highly recommend that people sign up to it and attend it because it's going to be an experience that you're not going to have a chance to get elsewhere probably. We also, what we wanted to throw out there, that even though the library is closed to patrons, we do have curbside pickup going on still. And with that, we do have a service called Books on the Go, which is where you go onto our website. If you go down into like the About description here in Twitch, you'll see a link to it if you just click on this graphic. But you just go in, you fill out a little request form that talks about the types of books that you are looking for. There's like a little box that just you can describe as much as you want. And then one of the librarians here, possibly Shannon or I, will actually go through and pick out books for you that we think you would like based on that description. And then we put them on hold for you, and you just come and you pick them up at the library with curbside, and it's super easy. So if you are maybe somebody who likes the content we talk about, or you trust us to pick out content for you, this might be a great option to get some new books into your hands, especially, as we get into the colder weather and we'll be heading inside a bit more, needing to find more activities to exercise our minds and keep us happy this season.
We'll pick out some books for you and you can pick them up curbside. So
Yes.
it's a great service.
And then we also, for adults, have an event coming up on December 1st with which I just heard beforehand, Shannon is actually
Yeah.
going to be helping with. So, Shannon, do you want to talk about Are You Smarter Than a Librarian, the trivia night?
Yes. So it's a virtual trivia night that Adult Services is putting on, and what it is that you form teams and you're going to be competing against a team of us librarians from KPL. And I am going to be one of those librarians on the team. So sign up if you want to see if you and your team can do better than me and my fellow librarians on random trivia. So it should be a good time. I'm actually really excited to be on the team because I love random trivia. And I'm just going to say now that us librarians are probably going to kick your butt. But, just take that as a challenge and sign up to play Are You Smarter Than a Librarian?
Yeah, and we also wanted to throw out here that if you enjoy listening to the librarians talk about books, other content you know that they're consuming, we do actually have a KPL podcast as well that you can listen to. We have all the episodes on our website. Again, if you just go to our website, it'll say like blog and then podcast. Just click on there and you listen to it. This past week, we had one featuring the author of Giant Days, the graphic novel. So if you're one of those people out there who really enjoy the graphic novels, there's a whole list of other recommendations in this episode. Past episodes have also included interviewing the voice of C3PO.
Yep. I was just
Oh,
going to say that. I
yeah.
was like, the podcast actually gets some pretty awesome author interviews, and I think it was last week, not last week's was Giant Days, but the week before that, they actually talked to Anthony Daniels, who played C3PO in the Star Wars films. So that's pretty awesome. They've interviewed all sorts of different authors, and it's like Elizabeth Acevedo, I believe, was on
Yeah,
once.
which is crazy. She has a busy
Yes,
schedule, I feel like.
I know. So yeah, if you are really interested in, listening to author interviews, and hearing about book suggestions and library activities, there's even a podcast episode from, gosh, probably over a year ago, where I was the special guest talking about role-playing games. So you'd have to go way back to find that one. But yeah, definitely check out the KPL podcast if you like hearing about that kind of thing.
Yeah, and so
So,
that's what we got for you for this month. Uh, Be sure to keep checking back on our library calendar and here on Twitch for more exciting events that will be happening. And we hope that you all have a great start to this holiday season happening coming up here soon. And stay safe out there, everyone.
yep, thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe, and we will see you next month.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.